Okay, we should be getting ready to start in a couple minutes. Just making sure I've got feed, because in the council chamber the Wi-Fi is pretty crap, so I have to sit back here by the windows. But I think you can see everybody, and away we go. Pay attention. Pay attention to what your ward member says and does tonight. Quite eye-opening.
I'm glad that I have my first responders and we almost had to catch you.
That's like the most bland contract I've ever watched. That's the just references the project. Yeah. So like everything gets attached to it. File exhibits. Yeah.
Yeah, my sister was
We're gonna have to replace them. It's like yeah. And it's all underneath the building. You know, when I was in my early 20s, I would call almost every household by all the way under what sites you were in the household. Or get sewer testing with the city government. So I fall underneath the house. Climb the sewer like left. So I call them underneath the house area. And there was we never you know what I came in today? Like, we had the chairs in the board. Yeah, you just she had no lights. I was like, well, there's like push spots, and it's just like, I knew she was sitting in here. So I showed her this spreadsheet, you know, she like and then we set
She should just redo what they wrote down for you. Yeah. I'm like, I guarantee nothing's gonna change, but I have to verify.
and then she said that.
why are we just throwing missing chair up? I'm sorry. It got rid of the janky one after we break on the neck. It's just music. We're permanently down a chair after we moved to the janky one. Except for I'm not the one that's missing the chair, and I'm the one who came And then I still want to hear you, you still get, didn't even like respond, just looked at me like, I sat there the rest of the time, so you saw something.
You got another one today? Oh, no, one day. She'll get you.
Let me double check.
Let's get started on the workshop. Welcome to those who wish to participate today. This is the utilities workshop, and I think Mr. Smith had kind of brought the motion and set it here with council's consent for the workshop. So, were you prepared tonight to kind of run the workshop, Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Okay, great. Take it away.
Denise, are you down?
Okay.
So, as you know, the Utilities Committee was wrestling with this idea of providing a discount for our most vulnerable citizens in Hoquiam without breaking the bank or passing the expenses for the discount on to other people that may not qualify for the discount. So it's not a general, the idea is not to have a general discount, but to identify the people that can benefit from it the most. So that was, Utilities Committee met 2 or 3 different times and discussed it. And that brought us here to the workshop. What we thought we might be lacking is the combined input from everybody that represents the citizens of Hoquiam, and I think we're just about all here. I don't have the answer to the problem. The committee doesn't have the answer that we're trying to seek. I sent out, everybody hopefully got a chance to look at this 3-part treatise that I wrote. It basically consists of the intention, the goal, and the questions. And this is all from me and what I extrapolated out of the committees and from comments that we've heard from the citizens. So if you've read that, I won't. On this, I've also connected a draft motion that should we move forward during the workshop, we have to pick this apart to make this work. I know of a local community that I got a hold of and talked to their deputy city clerk, who I asked pointedly how they fund their discount for their income. And she goes, well, what do you mean? It's like, if the household makes under this, then they get this percentage of discount, which can be this amount of money. And I said, yeah, where do you get the money? I go, do you pass that on to the other ratepayers, or? She goes, no, we just pay. I said, oh. They go, yeah, whatever that is at the end of the year, we just pay that. The city has that. They have that money that can be used at the discretion of the city council. And they so decree unanimously to do that. So there's a local precedent that we can take a look at. I've also listed other communities in the greater Puget Sound area that do this. I think SeaTac, Tacoma, Seattle, Edmonds. I put a copy in here of the Hoquiam city ordinances, the penalty phase. From the city of Edmonds, I thought was pretty succinct. That's A and B on the back of page 3. Any person knowingly making any false or misleading statement in any application or renewal for rate reduction to any city employee with intent to secure the rate reduction authorized herein shall be guilty of a misdemeanor and punished as set forth. And then B, Further, in the event of such misrepresentation, the water rate may be increased retroactively and assessed against the applicant and/or premise as may be allowable by law, including but not limited to lien procedures. So it's got a little bit of teeth. The Edmonds ordinance has a little bit of teeth to it. I included a copy of the City of Raymond's application for, well, I see one page, but there's probably 2 pages of it in here somewhere. So it's pretty cut and dry. It's very similar to our existing one. Our existing one is age and/or disability. Is it disability too, Corey? It's just age. And so what we'd like to do is see if we can put our combined knowledge and heads and experience together and come up with a way that we can make this happen. Now, I know on my desk when I sat down, there was some information that I haven't seen yet. And I'm sure this is a rebuttal analysis, since it's titled Financial Risks Analysis. I'll get a chance to read it after I shut up here in a minute. And at this point, I think it would be beneficial to raise it up for general comments from anybody that wants to comment on the topic.
I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
Because I haven't been to the utility committee meetings, and I'm curious if you looked at how the different entities confirm the income level, and like, so this is a household level, and we've got a lot of families that have multiple generations living in the house and kind of mixed sources of income, and so I'd imagine everybody kind of had to come up with their own way to measure it.
Yeah. The question of gaming the system comes up all the time. And I think that there's always going to be people that are going to try to game the system somehow. I think basically everybody's honest. I think that they're the ones that do game us, they get caught. I like Edmonds' remedy for that. They can be prosecuted, charged with a misdemeanor, and have to owe even up to lien procedures to pay that money back. So it seems like a light risk to us. Specifically, how do we know that all the wage earners are reporting their wages to meet that criteria? I don't know. I don't know if it's possible to do that. The numbers we're talking about based on a hypothetical situation of 30% of Hoquiam residents that took advantage of a 25% discount. Extrapolating that over the course of a year, we're talking hundreds of dollars that we may lose through malfeasance, possibly. Maybe even hundreds of dollars, but I don't think much more than a very small percentage.
What about I'll just keep going so people can hop in. Another thing that came to mind, I was just curious about people that are renting, because often that's also a limited income, or and it kind of depends on the rental agreement whether or not they're paying for the utilities or not. And then the lien teeth would only go against the property owner, not necessarily the renter, and so we should talk about how to make that work if we get there.
Yeah, I would think in a situation, obviously, where if the landlord was covering all the expenses, there wouldn't be an option to take this. Okay, because basically he does what all landlords do, and that's pass costs of his property on to the tenants. That's just what we do. On the other hand, if the renters are responsible, then yeah, they would provide their incomes.
Like a copy of the lease or something that shows that. Maybe.
Yeah, and we could whatever satisfies us. You know,
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I think where the mayor's coming from is, so for us, the account has to be in the homeowner's name, or the person who owns the property, their name. So therefore, if the tenant does provide misinformation and to use that teeth, it would go back on the landlord, versus that wouldn't follow the tenant. all of that back paying with.
I totally see that, yeah, I can see that.
But we could give them,
We lose our utility lien rights if we do not have it in the homeowner's name.
but we would still be able to put a misdemeanor for misrepresentation from the lender.
That
I
would be
think
the city attorney.
we can prove it.
I would also posit on the, as far as the betting side goes, because we already offer a discount to people 65 and over, we already have to do our due diligence there. The process would still be relatively the same as far as identifying who does and doesn't qualify. Because what they're going to have to present to us is going to be everything that they already have to do minus proof that they're 65 years old. So, like, that shouldn't largely change the process much. It'll just be a different age range of people who are under the same financial strain that show up to apply for it.
So, we're not due. Okay. So, first off, I want to thank the Public Utilities Committee for bringing this forward. We obviously all pay this bill. We know it's high. We know, like, we suffer along with everyone else, and we definitely pay the city more than the city pays us for, like, magnitudes, right? I think that the people gaming, like, that seems to be such a small part of the equation for me on what is in front of us. If you were to say, hey, Stephen, would you pay a little bit more to fund a little bit more? Sure. I don't know that that's gonna be true of, everyone that's gonna be paying more. And that's where I wanna hit an assumption. Okay? One of the things that was stated is it must not be passed on to other ratepayers. And that's what it said in the packet. And the reality is, yes, it does, because that's what the Hoquiam Municipal Code says, is that it's by utility rate, what is the phrase? It's entitled. Anyway, it does get passed. There's no, hey, we'll sell something to reduce rates. That's not a mechanism that our code allows for right now. So that's an assumption that I think that we should look at. Can we change the code? Sure, then we have to double check that because our code is in compliance with state law, that kind of, so I would go in the assumption that any increase in the discount, which includes more people being eligible, will result in some ratepayers paying more. That's the assumption I'm going to have. Does that mean that I'm against it? No. Well, maybe. I don't know. I need more input before coming to a final conclusion on that. And the other thing I want to say is that I, like you, saw this coming in. I've gone through it. Game recognized game. This is well presented. There's some things in here I hadn't really thought of, but are consistent with the research that I've seen, and then there's things that are consistent with what I've found.
I'll go over that too.
Yeah, but that's fine. So but those are my points. So the most important one I have is an assumption that to fund more people on this, or even the rate, that will get passed on to somebody. And then further, this is a symptom. We need more people or more entities, whether that's businesses or
Can you say that
residents.
again out loud? I don't
We
think I
need
heard you.
we need more ratepayers to get our rates down.
Thank you.
Whether that's businesses or residents or whatever. That's the if you have a $20 pizza and you split it between two people, it's $10 a piece. You split it between 8 people, it's $2.50 a piece. So the one way that we can systematically get our rates down is to have more ratepayers.
Exactly, and that's what since the start, we have the levies coming in. We need to start setting the table and be prepared so that we can start off these. And just so you two know, I've never said no. I said not now, period. That's what I said. And even now, we're still not lined up to do this. And we can't have a yard sale, Dave, every time we want to fund something. If we sell a fire truck for $400,000, where do we get it next year when we need it? And right now, we have bigger pressing problems on our plate. Do we get that fire truck replaced yet? There you go. That takes priority for me. That's important, that's the stuff we need to focus on.
That's the fire truck that was voted down.
Exactly.
Okay.
So where are we gonna get the money for that? Because we know we're one probably major breakdown for that fire truck breaking down. Then what do we got? Then we're gonna have to farm out with somebody else. Hey, Albany, can you come and do this? Then our money's gonna go that way instead of stay in town where it needs to stay. So, like I said, is it a good idea? Yeah, it's a great idea. Is it doable? It's not doable.
I guess my question is, why does the pizza cost $20? We're talking about
Yeah,
pizza,
sorry,
and that's where we're having
yeah,
this.
so here's the metaphor, right? So we can talk about our employees or whatever, we have infrastructure for our water system, we will have infrastructure that we have to pay for, whether we have 10 payers or 20,000 payers. And a lot of the cost is fixed. And so that's where you need more ratepayers to bring the cost down. The amount of variable costs in our system is much less than you think. A lot of it's fixed. That's where the pizza metaphor comes from. It's a $20 pizza. The fixed cost is the fixed cost. So, you know, if our rates were variable, great. It's cut some stuff, but a lot's fixed. That's
You're talking about our rates as well, what the city pays to maintain the system.
correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, if I could Greg and I are the ones who ran these numbers, and we're in contact with Corey. And I look at it more, when I look at something like this, we're gonna add, anytime it's gonna hit the general fund, or we see some kind of change in funding at these numbers right here, I just take a step back from a regulatory perspective of like, how is this gonna affect the operation of the city? How is it gonna affect the operation of our infrastructure? How is it gonna affect this ability for the police and fire to respond? Where's the impact gonna come at? How is it gonna impact our employment? So, the goal, I understand the meaning and the purpose of this workshop is the goal of helping residents who are struggling with the utility bills. We all share that. No one on this council disputes the need for the real Hoquiam. What we owe the residents and every other resident is a clear look at whether a particular proposal right now is something the city can responsibly fund. Over the next few minutes, Councilmember Larson and I will walk through the numbers for the general fund actually sits relatively to the healthy reserve targets, the realistic annual cost of expanding the discount on the way it's been proposed, the other obligations already on the books, and the tools we already have to help people today without opening a permanent new hole in the budget. We are not here to say never. We are here to say that the sequence matters. We should not make a permanent promise the city cannot fund. Fully fund. Can you get this slide up?
Robert, before we start this, there were some points made over on this side of the dais that needs to be addressed, and I need to slide forward. I believe you're right about the Hoquiam City Ordinance. In the revised Code of Washington, it says just the opposite, that the city council can provide for utility relief if the council votes for it, which got me thinking about this whole process back in April. So, I don't know how to jive.
Yeah.
I'm no lawyer, I played one once in small claims court.
You too.
Lost. So, I'm no expert. So, we've got that. And the other thing, last point, just a couple of sentences. I bring this to the council not as a policy change, necessarily, a permanent policy change even necessarily, but this is the way I see it, and I wish that everybody would see it this way. I don't want to use the term emergency, but imagine what it's like for those people we're talking about that are having trouble choosing between medicine and water. If I saw something happening statewide or nationwide that looked like there was going to be some kind of relief at the gas pump, in the supermarket, at the meat case, at our local stores, I would not rise to do this. I would say we've got the seniors covered. We might want to add some disability coverage to that. We have the tools and we have the talent. We have an extremely talented city staff over here. We're living in a small community. If we can't even for 2 years figure out a way, now this is going to be interesting to me. I can't wait to see this. If we can't figure out a way to cover $25,000 a year to help people afford to live in this town, to maybe get them out to a movie or an ice cream sundae or something, that we need to be able to take a look at that and say, okay, Dave didn't say it was an emergency, but I know there are people suffering in this community. I live here. People call me, they talk to me, I get the emails. So I'd like to see us move past this, we can't afford it. This is gonna be real interesting for me, and I'm gonna, with that, turn that over to Mr. Gillis.
Also, real quick too, just so we're understanding what it is the two of us have been fighting so hard for. This is an average of $25,000 a year out of an $8 million water budget, water sewer storm budget. So when we're talking the percentage of difference from what we're already spending versus what we're asking to give relief to these people is a very, very minute percentage of what is being spent on these services to begin with. So a lot of these numbers will be enlightening, but some of them are far larger than this $25,000 that we've estimated will be the cost burden on this annually.
All right. So the reason I call it a financial risk assessment, because anytime you implement a program that's not funded, you don't have funding coming in for it, it's a risk assessment. We're going to look at how it's going to balance out across the whole budget. So if you go to slide 2, so I learned a lot through this after this came out, and Greg approached me and we started talking about that. So the 40-day, the $1.3 million 45-day floor, that's what the General County and Finance Office recommends from the state. That means the city, if we drop below that, if we were to lose all funding for the next 45 days, the city still has to operate, maintain the infrastructure, operate police fire responses, repair roads and stuff like that in natural disaster. Right now, we're at $2.85 million on there. If you see that, that's the funding that right now it takes. The 90-day target where we should be at for 90 days, if we lose funding for 90 days, should be at 2.94. We're about about $90,000 short of that target where we should be at. And then the 120-day target, where the GFO considers this fully healthy, should be $3.9 million, and we're roughly, I have the numbers here, about 1.7 million short of that. I think that's correct. Yeah, about 1.7 or 1.07. What they recommend. So we go to slide 3. So I don't know how you guys came up with the estimate. When I ran the low, medium, and high, what it would take to operate if we were to give the funding to provide that rate discount. So 25,000, that's pretty conservative, and I'd like to see how you guys came up with that number. Because it's not, if we were to do that at 17%, even at the low 15%, for 1 year to operate that, for a permanent year, it would be between 180 and 200,000 to hit the city budget.
How many residents?
Over 8,000.
Okay, so if 30% of those 8,000 took the discount, took a 25% discount, what does the math come out to on that?
I'm not going to run it right now. I'm going to have the numbers on.
Well, I can tell you.
So anyways, going forward, so if we even ran it at the medium tier.
Wait, how many people live in Hoquiam?
8,000.
A little over 8,000.
So we're estimating these numbers based on the total number of people that live here, like everybody's gonna get the discount?
So
And not only those that
the risk
apply.
assessment management based on all the houses, if everybody in
At that
Hoquiam qualified
17%.
and applied,
At that 17%.
but everybody.
But we never proposed that this would apply to everybody, we only proposed it
We
would apply
have
to
the high
10%.
numbers. I'm just putting the numbers out there, just the low, medium, and high.
Okay, well,
Right, I understand, I'm just saying, if these numbers come off of the tax base of every single person that lives here, then you've already started with inaccurate data, because not everybody that lives here, myself included, unfortunately, is going to qualify for this discount because it's income based. So where we came with our numbers is based on how many
So
people
let me
who live here that
You
equal
guys
that.
gotta present your numbers, I'm gonna give my numbers, so this is not an argument, this is just the numbers I presented right here, and I came up with, okay? And so, the medium is between 340, 450,000, and high is gonna be 500 to 650,000 for, at the 40% discount. So the 1 year total, we see right here, for the setup to start this program is gonna be anywhere between 15 and 40,000 to add this in there, that they're gonna have to come with their information, you have to do city employees. And then also the hire somebody actually as an FTE position, which could be anywhere between $60,000 to $75,000 based on what the city needs to pay for that. If you go to,
Who does that job now? For the senior citizen
so
discount?
you're talking about somebody who's gonna have to go through and vet all these people, and then the term vulnerable, or also vulnerable, that's not a term you use for qualification for a, program like this.
No, it's financial.
No, it's vulnerable is not a terminology you use, it's a disability or incapacitated type person, or, they're not able to engage with employees, similar to what Social Security does for that. You can't have some broad term, because what is vulnerable? Describe
I was
that.
just being polite. I'm talking about people that don't make enough money to pay their bills. You can label that whatever you want. I use the term vulnerable to be polite.
Yeah, we have an income level that's already set, like in tiers for people who are 65 and older, right? Those things are already in place. My question was, who's currently responsible on staff for vetting those people? Because why would adding more people to that require hiring a completely new employee if somebody's already tested
That
that?
time it would take to process this, contract, or the, applications.
Well, yeah, if you were talking about 8,000,
But if you're talking about 400 over the course of an entire year, that's a vastly different undertaking of a job.
If we're looking at the total, how many paying utility customers are we looking at? Because if you look at the
3,000.
8,000, that's the total population.
It's more like 3,300.
Okay, so start with 3,300 paying customers.
We don't have that with these numbers though, which is what I was saying at
But
the
I'm
beginning.
just
All
saying
these numbers are
that's
based
your
on
lowest
8,000,
number.
which doesn't make any sense.
And then, also the idea of like, I guess what was proposed, we have in here is discount must come from city coffers or by liquidating assets. Liquidating assets is a one-time sale, it's not gonna fund it ongoing from the program. The reserves, it's also the general fund balances, the buffer for floods, apparatus failures, overruns, and grant cash flow gaps. It's not a permanent operating subsidy. When you spend that cushion after the asset is gone, the annual cost remains for the to run and operate that program, the discount program. The city is thinner when the next obligation comes. Go on to the next slide. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm already. You go. Where the yeah, there we are. So the permanent cost with no new business revenue that would cost the city over a 1 year period of time, with inflation contracts, the obligation the city has is between $300,000 and $650,000. The cumulative draw grows, approaching, from 2 to 3, the approach of the 4 narrows down, start dropping below that 4. And then year 4, forced traces, retest services, raise taxes, fees, or both. So here's the current obligations. If you go to slide, the next slide. These pressures right here exist with or without a new discount. The fire apparatus, we have the fire truck, one is 24 years old, one is 31 years old. The $1.2 million bond failed. So we have to look at the fact that our ISO, the Insurance Service Office rating is going to go down for the city, which will, and I have the numbers here that will potentially raise homeowners insurance. We have numerous projects with the flood and levee match, and one right now is $138 million in grants. The city must match some of those grants, and some of it's from 7 to 15 million. So that means that we have to have those funds on hand in order to receive those grants money. So if we don't have that money on hand, it's going to delay some of the projects that are being done with the levee, and it's going to keep the flood insurance high. Projects often also can account for projects being overrun. The city comes, that money comes from the general fund, if I'm not mistaken, if there's a project overrun. The city has to come up with that. And that comes from the general fund, if I'm not, is that correct?
For the levy project?
Yeah.
Or watershed, stormwater fund, lots of options.
Okay.
But yes, city ultimately.
And the grant cash flows, basically when the city has to pay first when we receive those grants and the waits for reimbursement. Multiple large grants they pressure for the same general fund. And then obviously we have labor contracts and vendor settlements and rising operating costs already competing for the same dollars. So I added this in here just to show you kind of like one area on the next slide. Fire protection, the ISO, and flood insurance, what the houses actually pay. So if the 1.2 million fire truck bond would have passed, it would have cost the households about between $28 and $36 a year. Now, because it didn't pass, we run the risk of our insurance ratings, going down, and then paying a higher premiums in our insurance, and that could be anywhere between $75 and $225 a year, in addition to that. So, and if levies are not funded or certified, we're still going to be paying flood insurance, and once those projects are done, that's going to be some things that residents will get in the city. If the reserves keeps failing, there's no good issue over the next slide. What's going to happen over time is we're going to have to cut services. When the reserves fund in, for example, what other cities have done is shorter library hours, delayed street and sidewalk repair, hiring freezes, deferred police and fire equipment, reduced park maintenance, slower facility upkeep, and fewer community programs. And those costs hit every resident. And it means that we're not going to get the sidewalks done that people I hear all the time when I'm out walking. The roads need to be repaired. The sidewalks need to be repaired. It's an effort to delay those projects. And then if it continues on, they're eventually going to have to raise either the taxes or fees for those utility rates, or both. That's what it says on there. Residents, so I also put up there researching different programs in there. The next slide. Residents may qualify for several programs, discounts to help them out through CAP office, the senior and disabled discount through the PD, Project Help, the senior utility discount, SNAP, Apple Health, 211 Washington Salvation Army. There's other ones that veterans can qualify that I put up there. But they can also, those savings, they can actually, the savings they're saving in those different programs, they can apply it to their utility bill.
But that doesn't count the water bill in a bunch of these.
No, they can apply it towards the savings.
Well, because some of these specifically say, like Project Help says it's for emergency fuel and heating, not water.
It's a resource that's available. It's not, one size not fits all, but other people can qualify for it, and they can apply that savings for whatever that discount is over to the utility bill.
You do realize that those are only one-time only help.
A bunch of them are, yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
especially with the LIHEAP with Coastal Community Action. That's one time for the whole year.
Okay.
Is the only assistance that you can get. I don't know about all the other ones, but that one I know for sure.
So the path forward in this is rebuild the reserves first, bringing more business into the area, making it business friendly, address the current obligations on the books, the fire trucks, the levies, Broadway, the contracts, inflation, infrastructure, grow a business friendly city, jobs, invest in and strengthen the tax base. And then use existing health programs which are already provided. And there's more resources out there. That's just what I was able to come up with so far. And then return later with the clear criteria and the most vulnerable, come up with something objective what for a standard qualifications for a program. No one's saying no. No one's saying no at all about this. And I'm not saying that the need is not real. But we have to be realistic about, not driving the city in the wrong direction, not being able to fund the programs we have going on as these projects get done on there.
And I might be inclined to give you a more sensitive ear to that plea if it weren't for the fact that we started all of our numbers and worry about the city coffers being empty with 8,000 people qualifying for this discount. Because I just gave a generous estimate with some mental math based on what my last bill was as a person who has 3 kids and a wife at home, assuming that that's the average. And we're gonna say half of the people that live here in Hoquiam qualify for the discount at its base level, and that on my phone comes out to only $99,000 a year, and that's assuming that 50% of the households here in Hoquiam would qualify for that discount. We don't estimate that that's the case on our side either. So I've already just ran the numbers right here in real time and come up with way less than what's here saying that we're going to run a severe budget deficit for all of the other things that follow this.
The amount of work that went into this is impressive, and your presentation was impressive. But it kind of falls under the heading of, if we do something for these people, we're essentially hamstringing the entire city. We're hamstringing, we're gonna affect fire trucks, even though that fire engine was voted down, it did not get a supermajority of the voters went for it. I think that the fire truck is necessary. I wish it would have passed. I think it needs to be re-put up for a vote and maybe marketed a little bit differently. But a lot of that and a lot of the other subjects that you covered in this don't really apply to what this workshop is just trying to do. We've got 20 minutes left before the city council.
We gotta look at the bigger picture, is what I thought.
You did bring it up, yeah.
You know, it's a bigger picture to, be realistic about it, to give everybody a fresh perspective.
But you know what happens when the picture gets really big and you don't have a Hubble telescope, is everything starts getting fuzzy and it becomes irrelevant. I don't care what's happening to a planet 2 galaxies away. I care about the people on my street. And that is way different than what we're seeing here, folks, honestly. I think we can do something. We can hear from the rest of the council. We can, if the ordinance and the RCW are butting heads, we can talk about that. I have a draft motion here that's not perfect. That's not what I do. It should be in your packet. I'd like to see us, if we were to do a motion on this utility bill discount program along the lines of what I drafted, then we could come back and fine tune it. We can come back and Mr. Johnson may say, no, we can't do that. There's no way to jump that hurdle between the ordinance and the RCW. Or Corey may come back and say, the general fund can't afford this $30,000 that we're going to try to do if 30% of the 3,000 utility bills applied for it's around here somewhere, 15 or 20% discount on their bill, what that amount would be at the end of the year. I don't think it's going to cripple us. I don't think it's going to hurt us. I don't think it's going to affect the bottom line. You disagree, but that's my position. If I'm wrong, I'll admit it. I'm not going to beat this to death. If the rest of the council thinks that we can't do anything and that we should wait for sunnier days, we should wait for the economy to improve, for gas prices to come down, for food prices to come down, for utility prices to come down, it will never happen.
Let's do it for everybody who needs it. Let's do it for the business owners. All right? So if you make up $3,000 a month, let's give them 50%.
Bring a motion.
Let's just do it for everybody.
The business owners
Don't
don't have a problem to
you're
not
not a
afford
business owner, so
food.
you just watch how you.
My father-in-law owns Northwest Surplus and Outdoors in Aberdeen. I am perfectly consciously aware of the cost associated with running a business, just because I don't own one myself. But I will say, even in my father-in-law's case, that he's not struggling to put food on his table and feed his kids and take them to school. But the person who needs this
I put my
discount is.
employees first, and I'm paying out of pocket probably 12 months out of the year, all right? So where does that put me? And I would rather pay out of my pocket and keep that business going and keep it open and put money in people's pockets, all right? So if we're gonna do it, we need to do something for everybody.
Well, it doesn't work that way.
What kind of business operates at a negative constantly?
There's no political or business model to make that happen.
Well, the solution
It
is
doesn't
to
have
bring
to
more
be.
businesses into the area so we have a bigger, broader base, like what some of the,
In every meeting
I
we
agree.
have,
Somebody
they
has
said
to
that,
use
we have the
the
levies coming in, and like I said, we need to start setting our table now, we need to start building for the future. Wave the lawn and everything can be fixed.
We can do that.
No,
We can do
we're not.
things.
Could I throw out a different idea, maybe? So we already have the low-income discount. What if we applied the new language, but limited the time frame to 6 months? So you can use the discount for 6 months. That's it. You can, let's go in a different direction. We're not gonna solve anything if we sit here and argue. So let's have some thought about what we could potentially change.
Well, I don't think anybody's arguing. It's good, it's good to have, a spirited back and forth. It's healthy, it's part of the process. I don't think we're ready to compromise the original idea of the.
So,
Yet.
so this is a good paper, but at the same time, when I go back to my original statement of assumption, a lot of, like, if these rates must be redistributed to other ratepayers, then whether we get a fire truck or not is not in the equation. That's a separate question, right? The long-term health of the city overall is a separate question. What then becomes the question is, do we shift what some people, or ratepayers, because some are people, some are businesses, some are whatever, do we shift what some ratepayers pay to another? Businesses don't get these discounts. I'm like, whatever. I did do some kind of crunching to figure it out, like how much is this a year? And I think the answer is between your two answers. It's definitely not 25,000, and it would maybe hit the low end of your estimates. Maybe, but probably even a little less than that. So maybe we're talking about
Is it 3%?
220 to 250,000 per year. Now, the question is, do we pass that, say 250,000 a year, to the other ratepayers that aren't going to qualify for this? And it is probably going to spread out to be lower than per ratepayer than you think it's going to be, but it is not zero, right? Like, I'm going to pay more, Greg's going to pay more for sure, because we're not going to be eligible regardless of what our income is. Businesses, if you have businesses, you're not struggling. I'm not struggling, but there are many business owners that are, right? And so I see your point. That's a difficult proposition to make, but you're correct. There are definitely business owners that are struggling to make ends meet because they have people they need to take care of. One of the reasons why I'm not struggling is I don't have employees, right?
I have another question too. Would we have to do another rate study to implement a program like this before we need to start this? And how much would that be?
Well, I don't know if we have to, we require to do one, but they cost probably 50 grand or more.
And they're gonna come back and say the exact same thing that we're doing right now. I mean, when we did the last rate study, we were smacked in the face. We were not ready for what they said, and because we were going down big time. And it was a hard pill to swallow, but it was something that we had to do to remain solvent in our utilities. It's like we're not making money off of this, we're just surviving.
It pays for the operations of those, the sewer, the storm, the water. I mean, it's a tick for tack on that, if I'm not mistaken.
Can the utilities discount, can it just be applied to, say, water, or does it have to go to all water, sewer?
It would be whatever is put in the municipal code. I think that there's several different options out there, and I would love for a council member or two to actually come and sit down in my office and maybe, or with Brian and I, and meet and brainstorm.
Well, that's what we're trying to do.
Well, I know, but when we have the resources at our disposal, and we're actually able to sit at our, I don't have my system up here, so it's hard to look at numbers. And I will say it, as the finance director or as the city administrator, public works director, no one has came to my office and tried to actually figure out exact numbers or what this would actually look like. I mean, you know, we've been sent stuff via email and stuff, and briefly glanced, and you know, Rob sent up briefly glanced at it, but it would be nice to be able to actually sit down and have a brainstorm to where we could maybe actually come up with some more accurate figures to see what it would look like.
The other cities too, I'm looking at the comparison, so Raymond, it says, relies on other customers. Edmonds, ratepayer funded, also still age, disabled, disability, and gated. Seattle, primary ratepayer and large system capacity. Tacoma, ratepayer funded at scale. So there is an what Steve was saying is, it is good to go over to actual people that are actually paying the rates.
I do have a correction to my numbers. Sorry, my numbers were if we still kept seniors as part of the eligibility. If we do remove seniors as a requirement, it will double it. And Rob's numbers come in right, which kind of surprises me. But yeah, could be a $500,000 a year program if we remove senior as a thing. Now, if we add something else, maybe it comes back down, but that's not defined enough to get stats on. As far as comparable cities, I think we also maybe need to look at Aberdeen that had at 300% with seniors, 300% of the poverty rate, and they ended up having to reduce it to 200,000 or 200% because they couldn't fund it. And so now those seniors that were getting a discount were lost. They were now back up, and that's a chunk of people that were getting a discount all of a sudden have that pulled back. So we definitely have to make sure that our numbers jam before we do anything, and to remove being a senior as a requirement, that is code too. But I think you've already mentioned that would have to change in the code because in the code, being a senior it's already in Hoquiam Municipal Code. That is a requirement.
The only input I want to add is that we have a responsibility, being city council members, of keeping the city solvent. So whatever plan we come up with, we don't need to shoot ourselves in the foot. We're one of the few cities that actually is running at budget and not at a deficit, and I wouldn't want to lose that.
Those windows, that table, they're put up there for a reason, for if something were to happen. And we are, and the other thing I didn't point out on that is that we are in a risk area, high risk area for floods and natural disasters. So the GFO wants to be at that healthy level with an operating budget to fund if something were to happen.
One of the things, Mr. Smith, that when you brought this up on the council floor, I was curious how many people would be interested and would actually qualify. And I don't know if we had an opportunity to really get a good number on that. But I should also mention, I think we in the last year or so have really turned a corner regarding some code enforcement issues. And it's interesting I think it would be interesting to get some numbers on the other connections that already exist that we don't have people paying for service for. And what I mean by that is we have quite a few homes that were burned in fires or have literally sat empty for many years, and most of them are not paying their utilities. Recently, I purchased a building and it had not had its utilities on for over 5 years, and it has multiple connections. And so in order to purchase that building, it's necessary for me to pay a capital facilities charge. It's $1,500 per meter. So I had to pay that twice. And then if you look at the number of years that they were not putting water in there, and you total up all of those bills, it's far more than what you're talking about a potential deficit. And so if we encourage enforcement on the existing connections that we have, and I think we are taking a kind of a fresh look at that. And also, every single new connection, it does help. It helps divide up the pizza, as Mr. Provoco put it, because those two connections are now in the system, and every 2 months I'm going to be paying another $750 each into the system. And so we missed out on that for 15 years on just two connections. And I know if those ones existed, there are many, many others. And when we drive around and we have citizens that come to us and say, hey man, this house is really bad and nobody lives there and can't we do anything? I think we're starting to get on top of some of that, even if it's a change of ownership. If we can contact the owners and try and help them find somebody else who's willing to buy it and create more housing that we're in dire need of, it would be good from both perspectives that are kind of being discussed tonight. One is like we can't afford it, the other is like it's not that much. I think we can find that money if it's a money issue by continuing to pursue enforcement of what's actually already out there. It's an idea. I also don't have the numbers for that, but I drove through the community and I just thought to myself, like, okay, that one, there's no way they're paying for water. And I shouldn't even call it a water bill, but you know what I mean. There's no way they're paying their utility bill. And you go to the next one, and I think you could drive through your ward and probably pick 15 connections that are not connected. If that was something that was required somehow through whether it's a policy change, that's a bigger discussion. People are going to feel like we're going after it because probably they can't afford it, and that's why it's not connected. That's why the house is empty. But we don't know that. That might be an easier inquiry than finding out like how much somebody makes. And you know, business owners, some of them make a lot of money, some of them don't. But I think that you probably have a lot of landlords in our community that either don't have their connections connected on houses that are empty, and or they completely put it on to their tenants to pay the bill, and when it doesn't get paid, you know what happens? We don't really have enough teeth like you were suggesting in here to go after that and make it paid. If nobody's living in it, you don't really have to pay, right? And so that might be an easier target to kind of solve some of the problems from both sides. And I know that we have other commercial properties that are like that too.
So Mr. Smith asked to bring this to a workshop because only so many people had input on it. Right. And now we've had a chance to look at it. Because, I mean, most of us hadn't even seen it until it was in the packet, right? And so I really appreciate that, so we get a chance to look at it. Right now, I'm not deciding, right? And what I'm going to be looking for is, you know, when we do the meeting, and at the beginning, we only talk about things that are on the agenda, and at the end, we have another public comment, and we talk about, people can talk about anything. I'm going to be looking for, are people saying, we should do this where we increase eligibility for, I'm going to say the senior discount, but the low-income discount at the cost of spreading it, or we should not do that because now because the argument against it, because we could talk about income and inequality, that kind of thing. We don't have time for macroeconomics in our city council meeting. But the reality is it's going to affect business owners and maybe their decision to join in piecing out the pie. Now, is it going to be, I don't think it's going to be enough for a business to say, I'm not going to relocate to Hoquiam, right? because I think that, it's gonna, like, you're already jumping in a whole lot, and that's just gonna be one piece of the puzzle, right? But I'm really curious what our ratepayers and citizens are gonna say about this, and that's really probably gonna steer how I feel on it. If it was like, hey, Steven, if you have to pay $15 every 2 months more, is that a deal breaker for you? I'm gonna go, well, no, not for me, but it might be a deal breaker for Mr. Guy. Just picking him, that kind of thing. So I'm looking forward to the public comment, and one way to really drive the public comment is you can put the ordinance forward. Doesn't mean it's gonna pass.
Right.
But
here's what I'd like to suggest. Mr. Vogel, thanks for that. We've got 4 minutes before the city council meeting starts. What I'd like to do is ask the chairperson of the Public Utilities Committee during the council meeting to schedule another Public Utilities meeting in the very near future where we can dive through some of this. Number two, this is being recorded. This hour has been recorded.
workshops are not recorded.
Oh,
we're
live
now, yeah. Okay.
Robin's got it.
Yeah.
I would encourage that this stay as part of the record.
Yeah, sure.
That people look at the discussion.
Yeah.
Yes, their city at work. And then for the remaining 3 minutes, I'd like to say thanks for coming and take 3 minutes to stretch and get ready for the. Chris, you got something?
I've got the briefest thing to say, if you don't mind. It seems like you all are going back and forth on what the rate would be. What if you had a finite amount that it would cost? Say you budgeted $25,000 to this program, and whoever applies, you
Would come
divide
out of
among
that.
those people.
Yeah, that was actually something I picked up out of your brain about 2 weeks ago.
I hate legislation that you don't know, and I'm sure everyone does, what it's going to cost. It's generally kind of stupid because you just say, okay, whatever it costs, and that could mean doom. But if you say, this is the amount, and then people apply and they divide the pie, why not?
I'll try to bring that up to the next public utilities.
And I would just posit one final thing really quick for the situation on the ground. Stretching and spreading this proposed discount, we said, might discourage a business from wanting to do business here. I will tell you that I know people who are intentionally avoiding moving here as residents because of the cost of utilities. They're looking to take their time, talents, and treasures elsewhere because of how expensive it is to just exist here in Hoquiam. So, at a certain point, you're robbing Peter to pay Paul on the same scale, where, well, we might get 1 or 2 more businesses in, but we're missing out on 200, 300, 400, 500 residents that would move here because they can't afford the cost of living to be here.
For the record, if anyone has to use the restroom, we do not have water. I apologize. Just an FYI.
But I need to go. If anybody
Oh
needs
my
to use
gosh,
the
that is the
bathroom,
greatest thing I've
we
ever
can
heard.
escort you to the fire department. Our bathrooms are shut down. Real quick. That's why we hired you.
All right, everybody. So that's this meeting.